Hey guys, if you are someone who has been following me for a little while, you would know that I'm huge into storytelling when it comes to kids Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's one of the things that kind of sets me apart from a lot of other Jiu Jitsu accounts, people who are sort of creating content around kids, as well as what makes the difference between kids content and adults content. Because when we teach kids, the language needs to change, right? We can't just take our adult concept and idea and just apply it straight to children, because when this happens, we tend to lose them a little bit. So if you're somebody who has looked at my content, understands that I use storytelling, but has wondered how I actually adapt my storytelling from my young kids to my older kids, then this is the video for you. So one of the most common misconceptions that I have when it comes to creating content and also creating games and plans for kids' classes is that my storytelling looks the same in my 4 to 5-year-old classes as it does in my 9 to 15-year-old classes. And unfortunately, that's really quite a detrimental thing that happens when a person purchases my games, for example, or they see me talking about castles and dragons and fairy tales, and they go from their 4 to 5s classes where absolutely this is going to work fantastic. Then they take it to their 9 to 15-year-old classes and they start talking about dragons and fairy tales and things, and it doesn't quite land the same way. If you have done this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have done this too, because kids that are 9 to 15 are obviously going to react very differently to the storytelling that we use when in comparison to my 4 to 5-year-olds that are pretty chill and they're, they love a good story, they love a good fairy tale, they love a good, analogy, they love to be able to make them laugh and things like that. So this is what we're going to talk about now. The difference is if I go and I take dragons and dungeons and fairy tales and I go to my 9 to 15-year-olds and I tell them that instead of close guard that we're going to lock them up in the dragon's dungeon and they've got to try and be the dragon and fly away, they are quite literally going to laugh at me. They're not going to take me seriously and I'm going to lose them. And then once I've lost them with the fairy tale and the story, well, I've lost them with my games as well. Essentially, I then have to go back to maintaining and controlling the room through behavior management because they're probably still laughing at me, rather than being able to use the skill of storytelling to help to enhance the jiu-jitsu. Okay, so how does this look then? So 4 to 5s, yes, storytelling works. I want you to think back to when you were really little. Think back to the very first story that you remember your family telling you. I want you to think about the dragon. I want you to think about the fairy tale story. I want you to think about all of those things that we're told as little kids that we remember. I remember fairy tales like Cinderella. I remember fairy tales. Shrek was like one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid. So Shrek is the classic, well, I say classic, not really classic, right? But the fairy tale thing where it's like the princess and there's the dragon, but now we have a donkey and an ogre, but it's a fairy tale essentially. And it sells. It works because kids are told stories from the moment that they are born. They're born listening to fairy tale stories that their parents sit and read them at the end of the night. Generational stories. We think back to some of the oldest cultures in the whole world. In Australia are very fortunate to have one of the oldest Indigenous cultures in the world through our Aboriginal stories, and their dreaming, which we call it the dreaming, their stories are told through art on the walls. I say walls, I mean rocks. But we see this. We see that how through generations and thousands of years, storytelling has been at the heart of what they do. So then we learn the stories, we share the stories, we tell the stories to our kids. Then the generational thing continues. So storytelling isn't anything new, but applying it to a concept like jiu-jitsu not only makes it fun, it makes it stick. It makes it something that they're going to remember. So when I set up games in my 4 to 5s class, I keep them really simple. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed. If you choose to use storytelling, do not overcomplicate the storytelling. Don't let it become so much about the story and so much about the fairy tale that we actually lose sight of the jiu-jitsu. Because at the end of the day, we're there to teach jiu-jitsu, we're there to teach skills through jiu-jitsu, but storytelling is just one way that we're able to help enable this to happen better. right? So we're talking about dragons. We want to think about, we played a game the other day about Toy Story. We were able to go, okay, Andy, when Andy's coming, you have to drop to the floor and pretend that you're a toy that's not real.
Hey, sorry to interrupt this video, but I very quickly wanted to jump in and remind you about the Art of Coaching school community. This community was built for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu coaches who are looking to transform the way that they currently teach. It takes you from point A, the coach that you are right now, all the way through a 12-month transformation to the coach that you've always wanted to be. I'm gonna leave the link below. Click on this, take a look around, and I can absolutely guarantee that this is gonna be the thing that changes the way that you coach forever. I'll see you on the inside.
We talk about Super Mario. My kids love Paw Patrol. Take anything that you like, anything that your kids enjoy, and just create a simple metaphor around this. Now, once they start to get older, your metaphors, your analogies, the way that you tell stories really does have to change. Because again, they're gonna not respond the way that you think they're gonna respond. So something that we love to do is I just take something really simple. Lately, we've been doing something with not putting your back on the mat. Right? You may have seen some of the videos on Instagram that I've been doing a lot about refusing to accept the takedown, lots of scrambling. And the way that I get my kids to think about this sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but I promise no cats are harmed in the making of these videos. But what I get them to do is I say, okay, but like if you drop a cat or if you throw a cat, it's never gonna land with its back on the mat. And they're usually like, what? Is she talking about throwing cats? I'm like, yeah, guys, I am. Don't throw cats. That's not okay. And then they have a laugh, right? I've just connected with them in a way that's like, oh my God, she's talking about throwing cats. That's so funny. We're not gonna throw cats because that's really not okay. It's animal abuse and it's do not condone. But all of a sudden they're like, I didn't know that. If you throw a cat, does it actually land on its feet? Yeah. It does. Don't fact check me on that, but I'm like 99% sure that yes, if you do drop a cat, it will land on its feet. I have never thrown a cat. I will never drop a cat, just to make that perfectly clear here. But what I've done is I've taken this ridiculous analogy about throwing cats and how cats never land on their backs and gone, guys, be a cat. Cats don't put their backs on the mat. Cats always land on their hands and feet. So if someone's taking you down, you want to be a cat. You want to be able to get back up. You want to scramble. You want to fight to get to turtle position. Because essentially what I'm doing there is I'm saying, let's scramble. Let's not accept the position. Let's fight to be able to either get the position that we want, get back up on top, force a scramble, any way that you can avoid being pinned on the mat and therefore essentially don't let the person score points on you. So it's the way that I've taken this simple thing that would be, hey, don't throw cats, into an analogy that now it becomes storytelling. I have told them the story about, yeah, did you know that like if you drop a cat, it will never land on its back. It'll always flip back to get back onto its feet. It's pretty cool, hey? And they're like, yeah, that is actually pretty sick. I didn't know that. It's cool. Kids relate. Kids are interested in this kind of thing. But if I went to my 4-year-olds and I said, hey guys, like if you throw a cat, I can pretty much guarantee that at some point, some kid is going to throw a cat at home and I'm going to be responsible for it. So we think about common sense here. I'm not going to go and tell kids that if you throw a cat that it'll land on its feet, because then all of a sudden I'm going to be in trouble with people throwing cats and, you know, do not condone, not okay. But what I do say then, I just change the story. Let's use single leg as a clear example. Single leg, I am holding the single leg and I'm looking to bring my partner's hips to the mats. Pretty straightforward and simple, right? Bottom player is looking to never accept bottom position. They're looking to scramble, they're looking to escape, never accept being on bottom, essentially. They don't want to accept the takedown. So say like for 4 to 5s, for example, I'm going to probably turn that cat analogy into something to do with trees. We like to do one, flamingo is a really good one. Flamingos stand on one foot. They keep their balance all the time. So that works well. But the other idea that I like to use is say you're a tree. Okay, so do trees just fall down? And I ask my kids this. When you walk outside, do the trees just fall down in front of you? And they're like, no. I'm like, you're right. Trees are pretty strong. They have big, strong roots. They're really tall. They don't seem to fall down very much. So when you're standing and you want to do jiu-jitsu, you want to be a tree. You don't want to fall. right? And then I'll get the attacking player to obviously grab onto the leg. I'm like, great, you're gonna chop down the tree. Your job, you're like an axe. You wanna try and chop down the tree and knock it onto the floor and knock it down. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just creating a simple story here. They're like, yeah, I'm a tree, but the analogy between I'm a tall tree and I don't fall down helps to translate into balance for younger children. Now, as kids get older, balance looks different because they're actually able to associate the word balance with the movement of, you know, staying on your feet, not flopping, don't be a dead fish on the floor, which is another funny one that I like to use. This is where storytelling changes with your age ranges, but the concept of the games doesn't change. So when I talk to my young kids, yeah, you're a tree. You're not gonna fall because trees don't fall. You're the, the axe that wants to try and chop the tree down, and we'll call it like chop the tree or something like that, or flamingo. Depends what the day is and how we're feeling as to what the story is. But then when I get to my older kids, again, guys, change your story, please. And I see this, it's so hard for me to explain to you guys in 30 seconds on a reel on Instagram how I use storytelling and how I use it depending on the age ranges, because I've had people message me and they were like, oh, look, I've used storytelling with this particular age group and it hasn't worked. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. 15-year-olds don't respond well to dragons and dungeons. But storytelling is still possible. It is still an important part of their jiu-jitsu education and their jiu-jitsu learning, and it is possible to incorporate, but you do have to put the work in to make sure that it's intentional with what you're doing, and also that it is relevant. You know, we don't want to just be talking things for the sake of talking. We want to actually talk about things that matter. We'll talk about things that are relevant to the game. Again, one of the most important things, don't let the story overrun the concept that you're trying to teach. When I talk to my older kids, I still talk top player, I still talk bottom player, I still talk about where I want their focus to be. It doesn't change from your adults. That's the thing that is important when you're using CLA, that those core concepts do remain the same. Thing that changes is the language that I use with the children depending on their age range. Hope that clears it up for you guys. I hope that you can take a little bit out of this in terms of how storytelling is associated with kids jiu-jitsu, the language that I use. Again, I know 30 seconds on Instagram really isn't enough time for me to talk to you about what I do in my everyday classes. So if you liked this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel. It helps me to reach more people just like you who are talking about kids jiu-jitsu and going, I don't know what to do here. This is my role. This is what I'm here to help you with. Like, subscribe, and if you like this video, I'm gonna leave a link, little clip box right around here somewhere for you for the next video. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be what Elite Jiu Jitsu teaches us about kids coaching, and I will see you in the next video.